It's 11:30 at night. You're lying on your couch scrolling through Zillow. You swipe past the mega mansions you know you'll never afford and you adjust your filters. You're just looking for something normal. 3 bedrooms, maybe 2 baths. A little patch of grass in the backyard for a dog. A place that doesn't share a wall with a guy who plays the drums at 2 a.m. You finally find one. It's okay. The kitchen cabinets are that weird 1990s honey oak wood. The carpets need to be ripped out. It's 30 minutes away from your office. And then you look at the price tag. $500,000. You think to yourself, I went to college, I got the good job, I make decent money, but who the hell can actually afford this? My name is Matt, and today we are going to do something that real estate agents absolutely hate. We are going to calculate exactly who can actually afford a $500,000 house in 2026. And I don't mean who the bank will give a loan to. I mean who legitimately afford it without turning their life into a waking financial stress simulator. Because here's the thing. There is a massive, life-altering difference between qualifying for a mortgage and actually being able to sleep at night after you sign the paperwork. For the last 3 decades, society sold us a very specific narrative. The narrative was, go to school, get a job making $75,000 or maybe $100,000 a year, buy a house, have a couple of kids, and you're set. But here's the thing. We are living in 2026, and the math from 2016 simply does not work anymore. According to the National Association of Realtors and the St. Louis Fed, the median home price in the United States is hovering dangerously close to that $450,000 to $500,000 mark. In major metropolitan areas, $500,000 doesn't buy you a luxury home. It barely buys you a starter home. It buys you a fixer-upper that needs a new roof. We need to stop pretending that $500,000 is a rich person's house. It is the new baseline. It is the new normal for the middle class. And because of that, the entire mathematical foundation of the middle class has fractured.
Let's say you want to buy this entirely average, slightly outdated $500,000 house. First, we have to talk about the down payment. Financial gurus love to tell you to put 20% down. Okay, 20% of $500,000 is $100,000 in cash. Let me ask you a question. How many 30-year-olds do you know walking around with $100,000 of liquid cash sitting in a checking account? Almost zero. So, in the real world, most first-time buyers are putting down 5% or 10%. Let's be generous and say you scraped together, skipped vacations, and lived with roommates for 5 years and you managed to save 10%. That is $50,000. So you hand the bank your $50,000. You now need a loan for $450,000. What is the interest rate? For the last couple of years, everyone kept saying, oh, rates will drop, just date the rate and marry the house. That was a lie propagated by real estate agents who needed commission checks. In 2026, mortgage rates have stabilized, but they haven't gone back to 3%. A standard 30-year fixed mortgage is sitting right around 6.5%. So a $450,000 loan at 6.5% interest over 30 years gives you a base payment of $2,844 a month. Okay, Matt, $2,844. That's a lot, but maybe my partner and I can swing that. Hold on, we haven't even started yet, because that is just principal and interest. You have to pay property taxes on a $500,000 house depending on your state. Let's assume a national average of about $6,000 a year. That adds $500 a month. You have to pay homeowners insurance. And look, if you've been paying attention to the insurance crisis over the last few years, you know that home insurance rates have absolutely exploded due to climate events and inflation. You are easily paying $2,400 a year for insurance. That adds another $200 a month. Because you only put 10% down, the bank doesn't fully trust you, so they slap you with private mortgage insurance, or PMI. That's roughly $150 a month completely set on fire just for the privilege of borrowing the money. So far, our monthly payment is up to $3,694. But wait, we are forgetting the most insidious, wealth-destroying tax of all. I call it the Home Depot tax. When you rent an apartment and the water heater explodes, you call the landlord. When you own a house and the water heater explodes, you cry and then you pull out your credit card. A standard rule of thumb in real estate is that you should expect to spend 1 to 2% of the home's value every single year on maintenance and repairs. A new roof, a new HVAC system, lawn care, plumbing fixes, and paint. On a $500,000 house, 1% is $5,000 a year. That means you need to be sinking $416 a month into a sinking fund just to keep the house from falling apart. Let's add it all up. Principal and interest, $2,844. Property taxes, $500. Insurance, $200. PMI, $150. Maintenance, $416. Total true monthly cost is $4,110 a month. $4,110 every single month for 30 years. So the obvious question is, who the hell can actually afford this?
To answer that, we have to look at the golden rule of personal finance, the 28% rule. The rule states that your total housing costs should never exceed 28% of your gross monthly income. If you go above 28%, you enter a psychological and mathematical danger zone called being house poor. So if your housing cost is $4,110 and that represents 28% of your income, we just divide 4,110 by 0.28. That means your gross household income needs to be $14,678 a month. Multiply that by 12 months. To safely and responsibly afford a totally average $500,000 starter home in 2026, your household needs to make $176,136 a year. Let that number sink in. $176,000. Do you know what percentage of American households make over $175,000 a year? Roughly 10 to 12%. Nearly 90% of the country mathematically cannot afford the median-priced home in their own economy. Now, you might be thinking, Matt, I know plenty of people who make way less than $175,000 and they just bought a house. My buddy Chris makes $90,000, his wife makes $60,000, and they just closed on a $550,000 house. You are absolutely right. People do it every single day. The banks will approve you for a loan that pushes your debt-to-income ratio to 45% or even 50%. But just because a bank approves you does not mean you can afford it. When your buddy Chris and his wife take their $150,000 combined income and sign a mortgage that eats up 45% of their take-home pay, they are voluntarily walking into a financial prison cell and locking the door behind them. And that brings us to the psychology of the trap. Why do smart, logical people willingly destroy their financial futures to buy a house they can't afford? We buy houses we can't afford because we are terrified, and we are driven by 3 powerful psychological forces: FOMO, social status, and the greatest financial lie ever told. From the time you were 10 years old, your parents, your uncles, and your broke friends have all repeated the exact same phrase to you. Rent is throwing money away. You're just paying your landlord's mortgage. When you buy a house, you are building equity. This is the psychological hook that real estate agents use to drag you across the finish line. They make you feel guilty for renting. They make you feel like you are financially stupid for not owning real estate. But let's look at that $4,110 monthly payment again. Let's see how much equity you are actually building. When you get a 30-year mortgage, the bank uses something called an amortization schedule. They front-load all the interest. They want their money first. In year 1 of your mortgage, out of that $2,844 principal and interest payment, roughly $2,400 goes straight to the bank as interest. Only $444 goes toward paying down your principal. So out of your massive $4,110 monthly output, only $444 is actually building your net worth. The other $3,666, it is evaporating. It is going to the bank as interest. It is going to the government as property taxes. It is going to the insurance company. And it is going to Home Depot for a new water heater. You are throwing away almost $3,700 a month to the wind. How is that any different than throwing money away on rent? At least when you rent, $2,000 is the maximum you will pay that month. When you own a home, your mortgage is the minimum you will pay that month. But the math rarely stops people because of the second psychological force, social status. As humans, we are highly tribal creatures. We use physical objects to signal our success to the tribe. When you hit 28 or 30 years old, suddenly everyone on your Instagram feed is posting pictures holding a set of house keys in front of a front door. You feel inadequate. You feel like you are falling behind. You think, if they can do it, why can't I? So you ignore the math, you drain your entire $50,000 savings account, you sign a mortgage that takes up 45% of your income. For the first 2 months, you feel amazing. You host a housewarming party, your parents are proud of you, your friends are jealous. And then month 3 hits. Hedonic adaptation kicks in. The thrill of the new house completely wears off. The house just becomes the place where you sleep and watch Netflix. But the $4,110 payment, it hits your checking account on the first of every single month with brutal, unyielding consistency. Suddenly, you realize you have $0 left over at the end of the month. You can't afford to go to dinner with your friends, you have to put your vacation on a credit card, your car breaks down, and because you drained your savings for the down payment, you are terrified. You start to hate your boss. You want to quit your job, but you can't. You have a $4,110 mortgage to pay. You didn't buy a house, you bought a really expensive 30-year leash, and you handed the other end of the leash to your employer and the bank. Here's what most people don't realize. A house is incredibly heavy. When you tie up 45% of your income into physical concrete and wood, you lose the greatest wealth-building tool you possess, your flexibility. And this leads to the ultimate tragedy of the housing market, the invisible math that keeps the middle class broke. Every dollar you sink into an illiquid, expensive asset is a dollar that cannot be invested in a liquid, appreciating asset. This is called opportunity cost. Let's go back to our couple, John and Sarah. They make $120,000 a year. They have $50,000 saved up. Scenario A, they fall for the social pressure. They take their $50,000 and use it as a down payment on the $500,000 house. Their monthly payment is $4,110. They are barely surviving. They have exactly $0 left over at the end of the month to invest. Scenario B, they decide to aggressively ignore society. They decide they don't care what their parents think. Instead of buying the house, they rent a very nice, comfortable apartment in their city for $2,200 a month. Because they rented, they didn't have to give the bank their $50,000 down payment. This is where it gets really interesting. They take that $50,000 and they put it into a low-cost S&P 500 index fund, earning a historical average return of roughly 10%. Furthermore, because their rent is only $2,200 and the house would have cost them $4,110, they have a massive cash flow surplus of $1,910 every single month. They take just $1,500 of that surplus and they invest it alongside their $50,000 into the stock market every single month. Let's fast forward 10 years. In scenario A, John and Sarah have a house. Sure, it probably appreciated in value. Let's say the house is now worth $650,000, but they still owe $380,000 to the bank. Their total home equity is roughly $270,000. Not bad, but they've spent the last 10 years stressed, house poor, and constantly fixing broken toilets. In scenario B, John and Sarah kept renting. They never fixed a single toilet. They never paid a dime in property taxes. What happened to their stock market portfolio? The initial $50,000 plus the $1,500 a month they invested compounded at 10% over 10 years. Their liquid net worth in the stock market is now $418,000. They literally have $148,000 more in net worth than the homeowners. And the best part? Their wealth is completely liquid. If John hates his boss, he can click a button, sell some stock, and quit tomorrow. He is not chained to a mortgage. He has ultimate freedom. The idea that renting is throwing money away is mathematically illiterate. Renting is buying the maximum amount of flexibility and freeing up your capital to invest in the greatest wealth-building engine in human history, the stock market. So what do? If you want to build wealth in 2026, but the math of the $500,000 house is completely brutal, how do you actually win the game? If you don't have a household income of $175,000, you have three highly actionable paths you can take right now. Option 1, the starter home pivot. You have to radically readjust your expectations of what your first home looks like. You do not get the 3-bedroom house with the yard. You buy a 2-bedroom condo or a townhome for $280,000. Yes, there are HOA fees. Yes, you share a wall, but the math keeps your housing cost under that critical 28% threshold. You live there for 5 to 7 years, build equity, increase your income, and eventually use that condo as a stepping stone to the house you actually want. Option 2, geographic arbitrage. If you live in a Tier 1 city, New York, LA, Miami, Seattle, and you make $90,000 a year, you are playing a rigged game. You cannot outwork a housing market where the median home is $800,000. You have to move. You take your skills, find a remote job or a local job in a Tier 2 or Tier 3 city in the Midwest or the South where a nice house still costs $300,000. You play geographic arbitrage. You lower your cost of living while maintaining your income. Option 3, unapologetic renting. You completely opt out of the housing market. You rent a place well beneath your means, you accept that you won't have a white picket fence right now, and you aggressively funnel the difference between your rent and a mortgage into the S&P 500. You build a massive, liquid, 6-figure stock portfolio. You let your wealth compound until one day the math makes sense and you can buy a house without breaking a sweat. Look, guys, the American dream is not dead. But the version of the American dream your parents sold you, that version is completely dead and buried. You cannot blindly follow the script from 1995 and expect it to work in 2026. The math is too brutal. The stakes are too high. If you let society, Instagram, and real estate agents pressure you into buying a $500,000 house you cannot afford, you are trading the next 30 years of your peace, your freedom, and your mental health for some drywall and granite countertops. Do not let a house own you. You are defined by your character, your choices, and the absolute security you build for yourself and your family. True wealth is not having the nicest house on the block. True wealth is waking up in the morning, looking at your bank account, and knowing that you have total control over your own time. My name is Matt. Thanks for watching.